Pomej. Hunt for the One-Eyed. Sherlock Holmes, The Galactic Cases. Episode 19. Based on the characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A goaudio production. The Ultimo One curved through the system of the star HR 8799, 130 light-years from good old Earth. Without a mission, Captain Decker could enjoy himself aboard. It was one of these recently discovered Earth-like planets, which still had no name, where some of the crew stretched their legs in the fresh air. The sky glowed orange with some pink clouds that, due to their consistency, could easily have been mistaken for candy floss. A gentle breeze wafted a scent of sweet plants, which bloomed mustard yellow in the far background, into the noses of the landed excursionists. The path, along which one could stroll leisurely, appeared sandy but not too soft, making one feel as if walking on clouds. Do you know what's the most wonderful thing? When you look in the mirror, Tornot started a conversation with a sideways glance at his favourite colleague, and see, now there's a proper chap. He pointed at himself with both thumbs. I hardly need a mirror. Fortunately, I was born beautiful and hyper-intelligent. Lura praised herself. Eagerly nodding, Tornot added, and naturally incredibly modest. Lura, you are a bit self-satisfied. Indeed, he shouldn't have said that, Dr. Watson muttered quietly. While that would have been polite, replied Sherlock Holmes, who was purposefully strolling behind them. However, it would have been dishonest. Mr. Tornot, does this planet not have a name yet? No, it was only discovered. Wait a moment. He interrupted himself and looked at his left wrist. Oh dear! What's wrong, Mr. Tornot? Is your arm hurting? Inquired Dr. Watson with concern. No, but my smart bracelet is broken. How annoying. Look, the small screen remains black. And that's not the fashionable colour. Lura smirked with a grin. Angrily, Tornot slapped it several times. Blast it! It must be due to the pollen from those yellow plants back there that the wind is hurling towards us. They've probably somehow crept into the sensitive technology and disabled it. I actually wanted to check when we discovered the planet, but unfortunately that's not possible for me now. That doesn't matter at all, Lura chirped. The main thing is that we're having fun here. Look, there's a body of water over there. No sooner had she spoken than she was running with flowing blonde hair in that direction, towards a not too wide, calmly flowing river. Wow, it's heavenly clear. The clouds are reflected in it like pink little sheep. Along the bank grew green hedges with large leaves, similar to fig leaves on Earth. Lura bent down and the men could see her white knickers beneath her blue mini dress. Oh, the water is wonderfully warm, she gushed, as she splashed around in it with one hand. We could spontaneously take a dip, Tornot. I would strongly advise against that, warned Holmes with a raised index finger. Just think about aggressive fish that might already be lurking beneath the water's surface, eagerly awaiting fresh meat. Oh, you're boring, Lura scoffed and began undressing behind one of the hedges. I'm definitely going to do a few strokes in this stream. Well, this watercourse is far too wide to be called a stream, remarked Tornot, though he too began removing his beautiful silver uniform. I find it extremely concerning from a health perspective to enter unfamiliar waters, Dr. Watson warned emphatically. There could be dangerous single-celled organisms in there that, much like our Legionella, could cause you all sorts of trouble. I'll gladly take that risk, chirped Lura. No risk, no fun. With a loud splash, she dove into the river and swam around like a professional aquatic athlete. However, without a swimsuit, only in her birthday suit. This river doesn't seem to be very deep at all. Don't worry about us. Another splash followed, and then Tornot's voice. Yes, indeed. It's like paradise before the fall from grace here. Oh ho 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 ho! Dr. Watson and Sherlock Holmes exchanged indignant glances and shook their heads disapprovingly. Come along, my dear Watson. Let's leave these two stark naked young people to their fun and continue our journey with dry feet. Agreed. Both walked silently, side by side for a while, when Holmes suddenly noticed something. Watson, we are not alone here. Well, of course not. Lady Lura and Mr. Tornot, the first officer of the Ultimo One, are splashing about behind us. No, Watson, that's not what I meant. I mean something else. Cast your eyes downward and tell me what you see. Footprints, he exclaimed in shock. Indeed, Holmes confirmed, and they belong to a man who wears a size 12 shoe. Next size up from violin cases, as my Aunt Prudence used to say in such situations, the doctor recalled. But I thought this planet was supposed to be uninhabited. Not uninhabited, Holmes corrected him sternly. Just unnamed. Come along, we must find out who lives here or who landed before us. In the distance, house roofs stretched towards the sky. They were the colour of dried tomatoes. On a cobbled street, a man approached them, his gaunt figure wrapped in a dove-grey suit with a black cloak. Who are you, strangers? He asked, displeased to see them. His olive-coloured skin glistened, and his head was adorned with thick black hair that stood out from his head like wild springs. We are from England, a royal land on earth, Holmes began, and are merely visiting here. My friend holds a doctorate and bears the name John Watson, and in my person, you are dealing with the renowned detective Sherlock Holmes. We both came here on shore leave aboard the Ultimo One, a proud spaceship of the Galactic Union. May I ask with whom we have the honour? My honourable name is Wayne Dibley, the master of the town of Doomstown. We have been here for a long time and want nothing to do with the Union, but rather to be left in peace. His final words had grown somewhat louder and betrayed his displeasure at the arrival of foreign people. Please calm yourself, Master Dibley, Dr. Watson placated him. We harbour not the slightest ill intentions. We are merely ordinary wanderers. If I may make an observation, your hair tends towards anarchy. You ought to try Dr. Rhoda's pomade. I suppose that's not available here. No, neither a Dr. Rhoda exists here, nor his pomade, and I prefer to wear my hair as nature allowed it to grow, the master corrected him. But, since we are speaking of appearances, I find your facial growth, that thicket above your upper lip, rather anarchic as well. Slightly piqued, Dr. Watson stroked his moustache and muttered, Thicket indeed. Holmes merely rolled his eyes and discreetly signalled to his friend that it would be better to remain silent. Behind them, Lura suddenly appeared with flowing wet hair, and Tornot with a suffering expression. Both were still naked and barely covered with fig leaves from the hedges that grew along the shore. As they looked now, they strongly resembled Adam and Eve in paradise. Mr. Holmes, Tornot called out to him. Something dreadful has happened. Yes, I can well imagine, he muttered at the sight of him. They both stood there like drowned rats. Master Dibley's eyes widened. Have you no shame, parading about in such an indecent state? Pah! Exclaimed Lura indignantly. How is it our fault that someone stole our clothes on your balmy planet? We were only bathing in the river for a brief moment. Who gave you permission to bathe in there? Inquired Master Dibley, rather displeased. I do hope you haven't contaminated our clean river with your wee. How dare you? Lura bristled, wrinkles of anger forming on her forehead. We most certainly did not wee at all. Indeed, Tornot confirmed energetically. And no sooner had we climbed ashore than our things had vanished. Disparu, as the French say. We neither saw nor heard anyone. The whole thing appears to me as a mystery. But worst of all, my smart bracelet has disappeared as well. Whoever stole it now has the ability to emit laser beams from it and could become dangerous to us. But you said the bracelet was broken, so the laser beam function must also be defective, deduced Holmes, as astute as ever. What is that on your upper arm, Mr. Tornot? Looks rather like a bruise to me, remarked Dr. Watson. Yes, I had a bit of a tumble whilst running. In other words, I fell victim to the planet's gravitational pull and now have a bruise in the shape of Italy. That reminds me that we always used to holiday in Italy. My parents and I, and later we went to Mars, but I found Italy much more pleasant. How extraordinarily interesting, sighed Holmes, whilst rolling his eyes. And who might this bashful curly-head be? Tornot gestured towards Master Dibley. Mind your tongue, stranger, he commanded in an authoritative voice. I need no laser beam to deal with an impudent fellow like you. Are you threatening me? Tornot assumed a fighting stance. Easy now, Dr. Watson scolded him. We are merely here for the purpose of strolling about and not to attack the virtuous master and his town of Doomstown. I want to tell you something about politicians. Tornot worked himself up. They're people with such thick skin that they can even stand without a backbone. Well, at least here we are able to cover our skin modestly, stranger, Master Dibley hissed, and wrinkled his nose in contempt. But you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Then heavy rapid footsteps echoed on the cobblestones, and a tall woman, she must have been 6 feet and 6 inches in height, came running up, panting. Master Dibley! Master Dibley! She wheezed, gathering up her long, dark grey gown, beneath which 2 spindly legs in lace-up boots peeked out. Something dreadful has happened. Aha, I can already guess. Has your clothing been stolen too, and now you've had to wrap yourself in rags, eh? Tornot surmised. Rags, she repeated in disbelief, and straightened her spine, which made her appear even taller. This is my everyday dress that I wear when cleaning my house. Oh, pardon me, but I couldn't have known that. Tornot nervously fiddled with his leaf loincloth. How embarrassing. He knows absolutely nothing about fashion. Lura apologised for him. I would be glad if I could wear something like what you're wearing, dear madam. Well, I think you can wear whatever you like, Lady Lura, Dr. Watson flattered her. An expensive gown, an old potato sack, or even some slightly wilting leaves. You look absolutely lovely in everything. Oh, thank you very much, dearest doctor. With a flutter of her eyelashes, she seemed to want to convey a promise to him. So, what has happened then, Citizen Calumet? Inquired Master Dibley impatiently, who was reluctant to take his eyes off Lura. Your wife is dead, replied the citizen sadly, and let her gathered-up dress fall back down so that her thin little legs disappeared beneath it. What? Again? He shook his head with an exhale. Oh, does she die often? Wondered Tornot. Is that customary around here? I don't think so, chirped Lura. They surely just have April Fool's Day here, where they all prank each other. Tee-hee. No, I am already a 2-time widower. My 3rd wife, Casanita was her name, wanted to build me a tower of love, but death thwarted her plan, and now... The master fell silent and looked down at the ground sheepishly. My deepest condolences, wished Sherlock Holmes, briefly placing a hand on his shoulder before addressing the tall woman. Might one inquire as to what caused the master's dear wife's death, Mrs. Calumet? Did she perhaps fall whilst building the tower? I knew nothing of such construction. How did she die? Well, judging by how her neck was deformed, I would say she was strangled, and by giant hands, she said, dismayed. Perhaps by the fellow with the enormous shoes, size 12, suggested Dr. Watson, searching in vain for his footprints on the cobblestones. But Watson, you won't find any footprints on these cobblestones. He only left those on the sandy path that led us here. the master detective chided his friend. "May I make a suggestion?" asked Mrs. Calumet, not even waiting for permission before continuing. "What if these two young people, dressed only in our botany, were to come with me to choose something suitable from my wardrobe, and you, Master Dibley, go home and bury your third wife?" "I would also like to make a suggestion," announced Holmes, and continued straight away. "What if I, as a detective, were to attempt to discover who is responsible for the death of the poor woman?" "And I," added the doctor, "can serve as his medical adviser." "Agreed," rejoiced the master. "So both of you come along. We shall proceed to the merry town of Doomstown, which has the fortune of being governed by me." Silently, they followed the master, who walked ahead of them with his cloak billowing. "Did your wife tell you if she had been threatened by anyone, Mr. Dibley?" inquired Holmes, whose grey cells were already preparing to solve the crime. "No, she told me next to nothing, which I found quite splendid," he answered grumpily. "Oh," wondered Dr. Watson, "did you not enjoy conversing with your wife?" "Tsk," he uttered. "If I had wanted conversation, I would have bought a parrot." Distinguished, Holmes refrained from making a corresponding comment, and remained silent until they reached the master's pretty house. It turned out to be an elegant-looking villa. Right in the entrance area lay the dead housewife, and Master Dibley stood, moved, before the mortal remains. "And she had such a beautiful swan-like neck," he whispered, barely audible. "Clearly strangled. Do you have any suspicion who might have done this to her, Mr. Dibley?" probed Dr. Watson, who knelt beside the body and meticulously examined her neck. "No, I do not know of such a beast," he answered sorrowfully. "And when did you last see your wife alive?" Holmes inquired of him. "2 hours ago, when I left the house. The murderer cannot have gone far." "Then we shall make our inquiries in the neighbourhood," announced the master detective. "Yes, try my immediate neighbour first, who is always cooped up at home," advised the master. From the master's house, a narrow path paved with white stones led there. The neighbour's house proved to be less elegant, yet still appeared dignified and comfortable. On the veranda sat a man who seemed to have already been informed about the tragedy, for he rose slowly with a funeral director's expression. "Come along, Watson. This appears to be the neighbour in question." Holmes stopped in front of the veranda steps. "Good day, sir. We are investigating a murder. My name is Holmes. Might you be able to provide any information?" "Yes, Mrs. Dibley has been murdered," announced Dr. Watson. "Indeed?" The house owner, a giant of a figure, stepped closer to Sherlock Holmes, who at 6 feet tall was not exactly short himself, and leaned slightly towards him, whispering, "I'll tell you something, Mr. Holmes. The master's wives have the peculiar habit of jumping into death's arms shortly after marriage. It does raise a certain suspicion in my mind." He winked conspiratorially as he said this. "That he is the murderer, to be free for the next one?" deduced Holmes, becoming even more attentive than usual. "Yes, you've grasped it quickly. Usually, my fellow citizens here take longer to understand what I'm trying to tell them in a roundabout way." With that, he tapped his head several times. "Do you have any concrete evidence to support your suspicion?" "Naturally, one doesn't go around advertising their misdeeds, and I'm certainly not a voyeur who peeps through other people's windows. Isn't it enough that his brides die one after another?" "No, it could be coincidental, at least with the first 2 women, provided they did not die by violent means," explained Holmes. "Or do you know the cause of death of the first Mrs. Dibley?" asked Dr. Watson. "She died of consumption, possibly because the master did not grant her enough to eat," the giant proclaimed. "Women sometimes overdo their diets," Holmes noted, seeing a woman step out onto the veranda behind the large man. "Yes, that is known to happen. However, the first Mrs. Dibley always looked very hungry and eager to eat. He starved her to death. The second wife he pushed down the stairs with a heave-ho, and the third one he went crook. At this point, he made a motion against his throat. "No, no," protested the giant's wife, a Valkyrie in a flowing brown and red checked dress, and hurried to his side. "What on earth are you saying, Longinus? It must have been that one-legged fellow who was lurking about here. I even asked him who or what he was looking for. Then he ran off as if the devil himself were after him." A tiny neighbour, barely taller than a pygmy in a beige little dress, suddenly appeared along the path and, being curious, joined in without being asked. "Well, I saw a one-eyed man who was sneaking around my house. He seemed quite suspicious to me too." "Oh, who's talking to you?" the giant's wife rebuffed with a piercing glare. "You do prattle on when you've got time on your hands." "Well, that's rather impertinent," the tiny neighbour bristled. "I know what I saw." "The witnesses seem to be in disagreement, dear Holmes, but sadly, eyewitnesses can rarely be relied upon." Dr. Watson shared his impression with his friend, whilst the neighbours continued their heated argument. "Well, my dear Watson, it must have been a one-eyed fellow, for a one-legged man could hardly run away so quickly as if the devil himself were after him." "You are right as always, my dear Holmes. Oh, look, there's the town master striding majestically again. One cannot shake the feeling that his dramatic appearance is rather important to him." "That goes without saying, my dear Watson, for he considers himself the head of the local community after all. Such people are vain from head to toe." "Oh, you mean he merely thinks he is but actually isn't?" Dr. Watson probed. Before his friend could answer, the giant bellowed, "Silence! Hold your wicked tongues!" "Oh, is he addressing us, dear Holmes?" "No, my dear Watson, he is obviously addressing his wife and the little neighbour, for neither of us possesses a wicked tongue." "Have you discovered anything yet, Mr. Holmes?" Master Dibley wanted to know as he hurried to the veranda. "Yes, your neighbour's suspicions have been directed towards a one-eyed man. Have you ever seen such a fellow around here?" "No, certainly not." "But it's true," affirmed the little neighbour. "Even if everyone else denies it, that's usually the way it is, that the truth is always most vehemently denied." "Silence!" bellowed Longinus. "I want peace and quiet on my property." "Come back into the house, Longinus," his wife admonished, and pulled him away with her. "I suggest you now go in the other direction, to my eastern neighbours," the master urged them. "And if you can find anything out, let me know as quickly as possible." "Yes, yes," Dr. Watson let slip as he departed, hurrying after the hastening Holmes. A few minutes later, both had arrived at the first eastern neighbour's house. In front of a saffron-yellow house with a neat crimson onion-shaped roof stood a woman dressed entirely in white, who slowly bent down to pick something up, straightened herself again while shaking her head. "Look, Watson, something has happened there," Holmes observed with his detective's expert eye. "Come along, perhaps we can help." The two gentlemen hurried to the yellow house, whose onion dome seemed to perpetually spin like a fan, yet one could not feel even the slightest breeze. "Look at this mess," lamented the lady dressed in white as she held up two large shards. "My precious vase has been destroyed. Are you familiar with kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken ceramics with gold or silver pigments, my lady? Afterwards, the object becomes even more valuable than before," Dr. Watson explained to her. "No, I am not familiar with that, and besides, none of us here have any gold or silver." Grimly, she threw the shards to the ground, causing them to shatter into even smaller pieces that lay before her like mosaic tiles glittering in the sun. "Oh, why can't any of us invent a material that only bends when it falls?" "How did your vase come to be broken, dear lady?" inquired Holmes, who naturally assumed it had something to do with the one-eyed man. "I have no idea," she stated credibly. "I left the door open for just a brief moment so that I could take a run around the house. For physical exercise, you see. I always do this to stay in shape, and when I returned, I found my beautiful vase in a severely altered state lying before the entrance." "Most peculiar," Holmes muttered. "I presume someone took advantage of your brief absence to steal the vase, and whilst leaving your house, they dropped it." "Yes, that's what I think as well," the lady agreed. "However, the vase only holds sentimental value to me. The brazen thief would not have made any profit from selling it." "Perhaps you simply did not know its exact value, my lady," Dr. Watson surmised. "It has often happened here in good old England that someone found what they thought was rubbish in their attic, which then turned out to be a genuine treasure." "Well deduced, Watson," Holmes praised him. "That could be what happened. Whoever the would-be thief was, they left no traces whatsoever." "Yes, they did," the lady contradicted defiantly. "My broken vase." "That is quite right, my lady," Holmes agreed. "Those are the traces of his deed, but he left no traces that would point to his identity." "Well, I can imagine which fool it was," she scolded, gesticulating wildly. "And would you share your suspicion with us?" "Most gladly, peculiar stranger. It can only be the new neighbour who has been watching me through the blind window pane ever since he moved into that dilapidated house over there." "But madam—" Might I know your name?" "Most certainly, I am Maud Adopkins." "Lady Adopkins, I am Sherlock Holmes, and as an experienced detective, I cannot imagine that someone could observe you through a blind window pane." "Indeed," she contradicted again, stamping her foot. "I saw his dark shadow behind the blind window pane. The blind window pane became, so to speak, a bit more blind, if you understand my meaning." "We shall investigate there, Lady Adopkins," the master detective promised her, and strode resolutely with Dr. Watson towards the mentioned house on the neighbouring property. It turned out to be a rickety, spooky-looking wooden shack that must have been nailed together by some handyman during a drunken hour at some point. Behind it, between rusty posts, a washing line was stretched with a few colourful tattered rags hanging from it, which added yet another eerie feature to the whole scene. After circling the shack, Holmes knocked firmly on the front door. "Hello, is anyone at home?" he inquired. "No," called a deep voice through the closed door. "Ha! The fool has given himself away," Dr. Watson said with delight. At that moment, the door was yanked open, and a rather angry-looking man stepped out. He measured a proud 6 feet and 3 inches, and thus towered over Holmes by nearly 3 inches. His clothing consisted of black trousers and a silvery shimmering jacket with broad shoulders that were possibly padded. His grim face was adorned with a black eye patch, which gave him a daring appearance. His remaining eye also appeared lifeless. Though it gleamed like polished wood, it lay motionless in its socket. In a deep voice, he explained, "This is not my home. That's why I said no. I've merely made myself comfortable here, as I'm passing through and couldn't find a hotel. What do you want from me?" "We certainly don't wish to disturb you, my friend," said Dr. Watson hastily. "But Lady Adopkins from the neighbouring house lost a valuable vase. Someone tried to steal it, but it broke." "What has that got to do with me?" The one-eyed man measured him suspiciously. Sherlock Holmes answered him matter-of-factly, as was his way. "It seemed clear to the lady that only someone in the immediate vicinity could be responsible for the loss of the vase. Therefore, she sent us here to investigate what you wanted in her house during your absence." "Nothing at all," snapped the one-eyed man and slammed the door in their faces. "An unpleasant fellow," remarked Dr. Watson. "And his good eye looks rather ill as well. It appears to have a cataract." "I only noticed his large feet. He clearly wears a size 12. Holmes knocked on the door vigorously. "Come back out. I have something else to ask you." At that, the one-eyed man opened the shuttered window, stuck his head out, and waited with a protruding lower lip. As we regretfully had to learn, Master Dibley's third wife, named Casonita, has been murdered. Several residents of Doomstown now suspect you of this cruel deed, sir," Holmes revealed to him whilst observing his reaction. "What people make up? It wasn't me," he uttered curtly and slammed the window shut again, causing the blind pane to rattle softly. "He's not only unpleasant, but also rather reluctant to provide information," Dr. Watson said irritably. "Did you notice how he disdainfully turned down the corners of his mouth when you mentioned the murder, my dear Holmes?" "Yes, of course. I always observe the facial expressions of those I question very carefully, my dear Watson. If that fellow thinks he can brush me off so easily, then he is quite mistaken." "Yes, he's already got a wooden eye," joked Dr. Watson. Then both heard rumbling inside the house, followed by a door being slammed shut within, which once again caused the blind window to rattle softly. "I presume he has just left the house and fled from us through the back door," Holmes suspected. "Then let's quickly take up the chase," Dr. Watson suggested, and already sprinted around the house. Holmes wanted to follow him straight away, but heard a familiar voice behind him. "Wait for me too," Tornot called after them. "Watson, come back here," Holmes ordered, whereupon the doctor turned around and returned to the front door. "Well now, where is the lovely Lura?" he asked, already slightly worried that something might have happened to her, for he was quite fond of her. "Oh, she's still rummaging through Citizen Calumet's wardrobe. I didn't stay there any longer. Have you discovered anything suspicious?" "No, we are still engaged in our investigations. Simply accompany us," Holmes suggested, graciously overlooking the fact that Tornot was still clad only in leaves. "We have just caught the suspicious one-eyed fellow here in this dilapidated house." "Yes, he refused to make any statement and made off through the back door," informed the doctor. "Oh ho, now things are getting exciting," Tornot announced with mild agitation. "Finally, something is happening, as I was starting to get rather bored." All three had taken up the pursuit, leaving the city behind them, and now reached the edge of the forest, where tall, deciduous trees, their branches bending under succulent green leaves, stood at exactly the same intervals. They resembled soldiers of an army, standing in rank and file, ready to fight against the invasion of woodcutters. It smelled of wet foliage and rotten eggs. The sky had lost its luminous orange and reminded one of a beautiful autumn day on Earth. On a fallen, uprooted tree trunk sat a man in a beige suit made of coarse linen, performing card tricks. Time and again, he fanned them out with tremendous speed, let them sink into a stack and flash out individually, shuffled them and fanned them out anew. "This odd fellow must have spent a very long time in prison," Holmes remarked to Dr. Watson. "An immense amount of time is needed to acquire such skill with cards." The latter merely nodded, for he was so fascinated by the man's dexterity. However, as they drew nearer, the man startled and, in his shock, dropped all the cards. "My poor heart," he sighed, and clutched at the spot where normal people's livers are located. "Do forgive us if we startled you, Mr. The doctor apologised. "Webster, I often come here where no one disturbs me. There's such an emptiness in my chest," he announced. "Well, better in the chest than in the head," remarked Tornot. "You surely must have a brain." "Yes, and you surely have no clothes, do you?" Webster sneered, offended. "They were stolen from me whilst bathing in your river, so I took leaves to cover myself." "Our leaves? How dare you?" "Actually, everything," Tornot replied to Webster's purely rhetorical question, "because I treat myself very well. Why did you even go swimming in our river? Water makes me uneasy because it has no beams. I'd prefer it in another form, for example, as jelly." Yes, good Lord," replied Tornot. "I simply felt like shedding my clothes and throwing my luxurious body into the waves. It's usually quite enjoyable, if one isn't as hydrophobic as you are." "Nevertheless, Mr. Tornot," Holmes scolded him, You could have clothed yourself in the finest fabric by now, instead of wandering about indecently in your birthday suit." "How on earth?" he exclaimed. "None of the items offered by Citizen Calumet fit me at all. Some pieces are too large, whilst others are too small. Some don't match my dark hair colour. Others clash with my fair complexion. It's enough to drive one up the wall." "Well, in times of need you could have taken something ill-fitting to cover your nakedness." "My dear Mr. Holmes, believe me, in all the things I tried on, I look completely idiotic." "Well," Webster wrinkled his nose, "as we all know, nothing is perfect. At the moment, you don't exactly look intelligent wearing our leaves either, rather like a troglodyte." "Would you perhaps care to take that back?" inquired Tornot, already slightly irate. "Gentlemen, gentlemen," warned Dr. Watson with outstretched arms. "Surely we do not wish to waste precious time with a pointless quarrel, do we?" "No, we do not," agreed Tornot. "What are you doing there, sir?" "I'm waiting for the harvest month," Webster replied. Yes, we're all waiting for something," mused Dr. Watson. "True," nodded Tornot. "I'm waiting for my uniform to dry." "Uniform?" Webster repeated in horror, jumped up from his tree trunk and ran away. "That man has just made himself highly suspicious," Holmes noted dryly. "Only a criminal becomes so agitated at the word uniform that he immediately takes to his heels." "At least he showed respect for a uniform," said Tornot. "I feel not only naked but also unimportant. As a half-naked, sparsely leafed civilian, my self-confidence has reached absolute rock bottom." From behind the trees emerged a little girl carrying a basket containing red berries the size of earthly apples. "Hello, young lady," Holmes addressed her. "Could you provide us with some information?" "My name is Arlett, but I am not allowed to speak with strangers," replied the sweet child politely. She wore a yellow cape, beneath which she had on a blue romper suit, and on her tiny feet were brown sandals that revealed 6 toes. Very wise what your mother has instilled in you," said Tornot. "Especially not with half-naked strangers," added the little one. "Yes, I may be half-naked, but the most important part, or rather, what some people would call the most important part, is modestly covered." Well then, what would you like to know from me?" Arlett's eyes glowed an intense green like 2 emeralds. "Primarily, why you were allowed to go into the forest alone," the doctor interjected. "That can be very dangerous for little girls." "Yes, the other girls don't carry a knife with them," she claimed proudly, reached into the basket and pulled out a curved dagger from beneath the juicy large berries, its blade flashing dangerously in the light of the central star. "Now quickly put that sharp toy away, as you certainly won't need to use it against us," said Tornot, taking 2 cautious steps backwards. A sort of demonic aura seemed to emanate from the little one. "Lady Arlett," Holmes addressed her, "have you seen a one-eyed man recently?" "Yes, certainly. I was the one who gouged out his eye," she stated, as if sharing her wishes for her next birthday party. "Oh, did he harass you?" inquired Dr. Watson. "Yes, indeed," Arlett nodded. "He came very close to me and tried to steal mushrooms from my basket. That was approximately 1 or 2 months ago, on the 18th of March. "But dear child," Holmes smiled, "there is no such thing as an 18th month." "Yes, there is," the little one objected. "Shall I list all 18 months for you?" "No, I forgot for a brief moment that we are not at home on Earth," Sherlock Holmes had to admit dejectedly, while stroking his high intellectual forehead. "It must be due to the local air." "Ah, so you're from Earth, I see. He, she giggled. "Well, whatever floats your boat." "You know, little lady, we're looking for an evil murderer," Dr. Watson revealed to her. "We're already on his trail and don't want him to escape. Whoever the murderer was, He cannot leave this forest, she said with absolute certainty. And what makes you so sure, little lady? A high border fence has been built around it, and it is insurmountable. I maintain there is no insurmountable fence. With enough energy, one can overcome any fence. Tornot looked from the child, to whom he had listened attentively, to the detective, who was thinking hard. I quite agree with you, Holmes nodded. And, sadly, the only sensible border fence against human stupidity has yet to be invented. At any rate, the murderer cannot escape, Nyanya. The little one giggled again. Perhaps he doesn't want to at all, since he wants to murder after all, and it suits him quite well that his victims cannot escape thanks to this border fence, Holmes deduced. I, however, have no boundaries, claimed Arlette. Suddenly her yellow cape spread out and she rose into the air and flew away with her basket of fruit. Oh, a flying child, marvelled Dr. Watson, who watched her depart in bewilderment. What a pity! I would have loved to sample those large berries, said Tornot dejectedly. Something is not quite right here, remarked Holmes, scratching his chin. Oh, nonsense! The little toad surely just strapped on a flying belt under her romper suit, Tornot dismissed. It's nothing to ponder over for long. At any rate, she hasn't seen the one-eyed fellow, whom she made that way in the first place, for quite some time. From this one could deduce, Holmes pondered, that he no longer dares to come here, lest he lose his remaining eye should he encounter that aggressive child again. Perhaps it wasn't even a child at all, but rather an undersized robot, Tornot suspected. Dark clouds drifted above them, dimming the brightness of the day. Looks like rain to me, Dr. Watson announced bad weather. We should return to the city, for if lightning strikes a tree, it could easily kill us. Therefore, all three of them quickly made their way back to their starting point. Shortly before they reached the outskirts of the city, they encountered an angler. He wore Wellington boots, bottle green dungarees, and carried his fishing rod casually over his shoulder. Excuse me, gentlemen, are you perhaps going fishing in the forest? Asked Sherlock Holmes. The river is actually in the exact opposite direction. That's true, but it's going to rain soon, so I can fish in the forest as well. Veritable torrents pour down from the sky, and sometimes there are even fish in them, explained the man. If you're from the city, then perhaps you've already heard that Master Dibley's third wife has been murdered, hoped Dr. Watson. Could you provide us with any information about the matter? Throughout their marriage, they always beat around the bush, the angler expressed cryptically. Do you think the master capable of murder? Holmes observed his reaction. His expression remained unchanged as the man with the fishing rod replied, The human brain is a wondrous grave, the cemetery of countless ideas and missed opportunities, and of course, also the sanctuary of evil thoughts, merely lying in wait to be put into action. Man, sighed Tornot, can you not simply say yes or no? I could, but I am a verbose person who likes to express himself eloquently. By the way, you should dress more smartly. Tornot simply walked on, as he had no desire to tell the angler the story of how he had been robbed of his clothing. Holmes, however, nodded knowingly. Indeed, a man of the world. So you mean, if I understand you correctly, the master would certainly be capable of such an evil deed? As capable as each and every one of us. The question is merely, what benefit would he gain from losing yet another one of his chosen ones? The man grinned with a cunning eye. Dr. Watson grew impatient. Now, do speak openly about what you think of the whole matter. Why might the master have brought his third wife to her death? What do women and fog have in common? When they disappear, it can still turn into a lovely day. The angler replied rather evasively. So, Mrs. Dibley, the third, was rather a difficult lady? Dr. Watson wanted to confirm. God gives us the nuts but doesn't crack them open. God help Master Dibley find a wife, but he didn't help him tame her. Come along, Watson. We're merely wasting our time with a philosopher who will never express himself clearly. On the outside, we are led astray in the most peculiar ways. Only within ourselves do we find freedom, the angler called after them with a smirk. People of limited education who are greatly dissatisfied with their own economic situation are often quite susceptible to philosophy, Holmes observed. They comfort themselves with wise words they've read somewhere and parrot them back at the first opportunity. What makes you think he is dissatisfied with his economic situation, my dear friend? The doctor wanted to know. It's quite possible he doesn't need the fish for sustenance, but rather fishes for pleasure, just like Lord Winterbottom, who always used to fish at Bassenthwaite Lake. Lord Winterbottom always fished dressed impeccably, my dear Watson. Did you not notice that the philosophical fellow's trousers had been patched several times? He does not appear to be in a financial position to purchase a new pair of trousers. Oh, I hadn't noticed that at all. Well, Watson, nothing escapes my keen eye for detail. Come along, we must pick up our pace. Finally, they caught up with Tornot, who seemed rather agitated. Just imagine, I have just seen the one-eyed man, unfortunately, only very briefly, as he moves at considerable speed. Actually, at superhuman speed. As he whizzed past me, several leaves fell out of my makeshift loincloth. Well, at least there are still enough leaves left to cover your modesty, Dr. Watson reassured him. In which direction did he disappear? Holmes pressed. Towards the sunset, Tornot indicated. Then let us hurry there at a running pace, commanded Holmes, and began to run. Stop! I cannot go that fast, Dr. Watson complained about his own slowness. The sun sank like an enormous red ball and made the mustard-yellow plants glow orange. It looked as though all the shrubs were standing in bright flames. They have marvellous flora here, remarked Tornot, coming to a halt. As far as I can tell, this is just a warehouse. They stood together, the three of them, before a tall building that had neither windows nor doors. From the roof, a neon sign blinked, though its text was written in a foreign script. What could these letters possibly mean? The doctor asked himself more than anyone else. Probably no entry for uninvited guests, Tornot reckoned, for I cannot see any way to get inside anywhere. There is a way into every house, Holmes insisted, examining the walls of the tall building more closely. And there we have it. Look at these indentations here. That's surely just for decoration, Tornot dismissed. Holmes explored the facade bit by bit with his hands. We shall soon see about that. There. After just a few attempts at feeling the decorations on the building's wall, one of the indentations slid sideways and revealed a path into a dark room. Congratulations, praised the doctor. Once again, you have found the solution. Well, do not praise him too soon, warned Tornot. We have neither found the one-eyed man nor obtained a confession that he is indeed our sought-after murderer. Everything comes to those who can wait, Dr. Watson announced. No, please don't start philosophizing as well, warned Tornot, or I shall run away again. During their verbal sparring, Holmes examined his hands. Most peculiar, I suddenly have mustard on my palms. Really? The doctor stepped closer and sniffed. Dijon mustard, if I'm not mistaken, and what a lovely yellow colour it is. That belongs on a sausage sandwich, remarked Tornot, which reminds me that I've been rather hungry for quite some time. How can anyone think about food in such a tense situation? Dr. Watson shook his head. What secrets might be hidden in that dark room? Hopefully a pantry, Tornot blurted out. Meanwhile, Sherlock Holmes had cleaned his hands with a handkerchief from his trouser pocket. We had best go inside so that we can explore it as soon as possible. I smell a peculiar odour. Hardly had they crossed the room's threshold when a piercing sound rang out. The high-pitched tone drilled deafeningly into the ear canals of all three intruders. "Aha!" exclaimed Tornot. "That's a security barrier we cannot simply walk through. A siren prevents that." "Perhaps one must say a specific word," Holmes surmised. "Or a combination of words, something like open sesame." At once, the sound ceased, and silence reigned again. "How on earth did you come up with that particular combination of words, my dear friend?" the doctor wanted to know. "When I had read the newspaper and found no interesting article, I sometimes picked up a book which our good Mrs. Hudson had placed in the display cabinet," the master detective explained. "In that book about Oriental fairy tales, those three words were used by a certain Ali Baba to enter the cave containing the treasures of precisely 40 thieves." "Well, look at that," marvelled Dr. Watson. "So many thieves in a country that readily imposes the chopping off of thieving hands as punishment." "Indeed, even the harshest penalties won't deter a wicked person," Holmes noted as he made his way into the dark room. "One can't see one's hand in front of one's face in here. Fortunately, I brought matches for lighting my pipe." He promptly struck one and was able to glimpse the interior of the dark room. "Oh, careful," warned Tornot. "If there's explosive material lying about and it comes into contact with open flames, then boom." "No, there are only lots of crates standing around here," Holmes observed. "On some of these wooden containers it says handle with care. That means the contents are fragile. I wouldn't be surprised if we find precious vases in these crates." "How did you come up with that?" Tornot tapped curiously on one of the crates, which sounded hollow. The first match had burnt out, and Holmes lit a second one. "Because Lady Adopkins, dressed in white, had a vase shattered, and that happened during an attempt to steal it." "Yes, now that you mention it, I remember that too," mumbled Dr. Watson, before continuing more loudly. "That could have been the very reason why poor Mrs. Dibley was murdered. She wouldn't give her vase to the robber." "But we don't even know if there is a vase stored in Master Dibley's house," Tornot interjected. "No proper household should be without a vase," the doctor insisted. Meanwhile, Holmes had lit the third match and lifted the lid of a crate with his free hand, peering inside with understandable curiosity. "As I correctly suspected, in this crate lies, nestled in soft straw, an expensive-looking vase." "Hello, are you in there?" Lura's bright voice penetrated the room, almost as loud as the siren's alarm tone from earlier. As Holmes's match had gone out again, all three men made their way back outside and encountered Lura, who had put her clothes back on and was carrying Tornot's uniform over her arm. "Ah, my uniform is already dry again. Thank you, Lura," he said delightedly as he took his uniform from her to quickly dress himself again. Right then, these leaves were starting to become bothersome. "Clothes make the man," that saying is truly accurate. I think I look much more masculine straight away. "Yes," Lura agreed in an indifferent tone. "What have you lot been up to in there?" "Nothing unlawful, though we have discovered a thief's warehouse," Dr. Watson informed her. "Not so hasty, my dear friend," Holmes scolded him. "That these vases were all stolen is merely my assumption. I have not yet found proof of that, let alone evidence that the one-eyed man stole them, or whether he is also Mrs. Dibley's murderer." "Whatever, as long as the folks here get served up a culprit from us and we can quietly scarper off," Tornot said casually. "I must strongly object," the doctor said indignantly. "We simply cannot deliver an innocent person as the perpetrator just to placate the population. What if the real culprit strikes again?" Suddenly, something occurs to me that I had missed due to distraction, Holmes pondered whilst scratching the back of his head. "This Longinus?" "Yes, what about him?" Dr. Watson stroked his moustache. "We didn't tell him that Mrs. Dibley was strangled." No, Holmes, we did not. I spoke of murdered, as far as I can recall. Precisely, my dear Watson. And yet he pointed to his neck and made a croak sound. How, therefore, could he have known that Mrs. Dibley was strangled? Yes, now that you mention it, I remember too, recalled the doctor. That is an important piece of evidence. We should have another word with him, Holmes suggested, and already set off in the direction of his house. That would be quite an astonishing revelation, that the neighbour is the murderer. Dr. Watson could barely keep up with his friend's pace. Not so fast, Holmes. Even the most pious cannot live in peace if it does not please the wicked neighbour, as they say so aptly, mumbled the master detective. As far as I'm concerned, but let's hurry. I want to get back aboard my ship, Tornot hissed. What do you mean your ship? You're only the first officer, not the captain, Lura reminded him. The two argued the entire way back to Master Dibley's neighbour. From there, his wife, the Valkyrie, came running towards them, in her flowing garment, slightly out of breath and in the utmost state of nervousness. What terrible thing has happened that you appear to be fleeing, Mrs. Longinus? Inquired Holmes. My husband is dead. After this statement, she covered her mouth, as if she could take back those fateful words and thereby bring him back to life. Enjoy your life constantly, for you are dead longer than alive, Tornot rattled off. Mr. Holmes has already caught him as Mrs. Dibley's murderer due to a careless statement, so there's no need to get yourself so worked up, good woman. He would have been brought to justice anyway. Ack. As he said this, he gestured at his throat. What nonsense are you talking about? She said angrily and wailed. The one-eyed man killed Longinus, simply struck him dead. But why? Hurrah! I've got it! Tornot suddenly cheered. The one-eyed man is something like an avenger of the disinherited. He caught Longinus in the act of murdering Mrs. Dibley, and now he has held him to account. Case solved. But Mr. Tornot, objected Dr. Watson, why did he not act immediately when he witnessed the disgraceful deed? How should I know? Probably he wasn't in the right mood to carry out the just punishment, or he had something else to do first. In any case, the matter is solved, and that's that. Wait, there stands the one-eyed man. Lura pointed out a large figure. Goodness, he looks terrifying. Come on, one-eyed man, Tornot shouted at him. Confess everything for the record, or I'll become rather unpleasant. He bravely strode towards the one-eyed man. Wake up! Called the robot Elmer, into which the one-eyed man had suddenly transformed, to everyone's astonishment. You are hallucinating! Wake up! Oh, that's our Elmer! Holmes recognized him with relief. The metallic servant and chief robot of the Ultimo One. Yes, it's me. Yes, it's me. All right, my dear tin companion. We've understood. Or is your soundtrack stuck again? Inquired Tornot. What happened? I've been trying for hours to explain to you that you've all fallen victim to a hallucination, explained the faithful robot patiently. It must be due to the pollen from the yellow plants that entered your brain through your nose. After crossing the blood-brain barrier, these plant particles wreaked havoc in your thinking apparatus without restraint and gave you completely false environmental impressions. Really? Tornot could not believe it. Oh yes, unfortunately, I was not allowed to administer an electric shock to you. I had to watch helplessly what you were doing. You undressed, then pretended to swim, then covered certain parts of your body with leaves, then ran about like a madman, then had meaningless dialogues with non-existent people, and finally got dressed again, Mr. Tornot, described the robot. Shall I also recount your strange behaviour to the other humans? No, please don't, Lura pleaded with him, her cheeks showing a blush of shame that could easily have been mistaken for rouge. Bewildered, Dr. Watson looked around. So, there isn't even a city called Doomstown? No, there isn't, Elmer assured him. And no Master Dibley either? No, he doesn't exist either. The planet is uninhabited. Well, in that case, I hereby submit a proposal concerning the name of this planet, announced Holmes, who had quickly readjusted to the given reality. Planet hallucination! You were listening to S. Pomej. Hunt for the One-Eyed. Sherlock Holmes, The Galactic Cases. Episode 19. Based on the characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A goaudio production.